Who are all those people? Who are they? Huh? Who are they? Hello, BookTube. And welcome back to your Daily Penguin. This is your Daily Schnauzer. This is our little waddle through my Penguin Classic wall, book by book, and author by author. There's the whole Megillah wall right behind me there. And we are slowly going through them, and I have hit a vein of Penguin Classic Deluxe editions. These higher quality paperback reprints that Penguin does, they're clearly not meant. These are the Penguin Classic reprints that clearly aren't meant for schools, where the normal Penguin Classic black spine paperbacks that you see, you can buy. It wouldn't be out of place for you to buy a box load of those for your classroom of students. Whereas the Penguin Classic Deluxe editions are more something that you might want to keep for yourself. They're more something you might want to give as a present. Things like that. They have deckled edges usually. They have French flaps usually. They have usually newly commissioned artwork all over them. They're usually paired with some sort of new introduction, new to the work, even if the introduction is old. They're just a really, really good idea. One of the many really, really good ideas comparatively recently embarked on by Penguin Classics that I just wholeheartedly approve of them. The Penguin Classic Deluxe editions, the hardcover classics, the editorial gambles that just the ordinary black spine classic line makes with some of the titles that it chooses. I approve of it all. I love it. Even if I don't end up loving the end product, I still love the idea, the adventurousness of it all. Unfortunately, today's Daily Penguin doesn't have much in the way of adventure about it. This is Moby Dick. This is the Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of Moby Dick. It's got the deckled edges there. It's got the French flaps. This is artwork on the front and the flaps. There's Queequeg, and there's the back flap. There is one presumes Ishmael, but because it's not Ahab would have a beard. And also the only picture that I like, the front cover. I don't know what that is. I'm not really sure what that is, and anyone who with even a passing familiarity with whaling would be able to spot. It's like one of those old magazine spoofs that Norman Rockwell used to do to see how many oddities you can spot in one picture. So this is meant to be very, very impressionistic. Obviously, I would assume it does. But the back cover I really like. I really wish this was the front cover. There's no need for anything more than that. There's no need for an action scene. That is wonderful and foreboding. And the artwork is by someone going by the name of Tony Millionaire. And the book has an introduction by Nathaniel Philbrick, Nantucket's own Nathaniel Philbrick, who wrote In the Heart of the Sea and wrote a little book called Why Read Moby Dick, and whose introduction here is just what you would expect. It's incredibly readable. It's incredibly memorable and quick and sharp. It's meant, I assume, despite the fact that I'm not sure that these Penguin Classic Deluxe editions are made for schools, I feel certain that his introduction is meant to detooth the intimidation factor of this book, to get students on board with maybe reading something this big, and something that, rightly or wrongly, I say wrongly, has been associated in culture forever as one of the most boring books ever written. Immortalized there in Jeff Smith's Bone, his graphic novel Bone. I mean, a scene that I need not get into, but it boiled me blood. But one way or another, we've done a read-along of Moby Dick on this channel, and I've mentioned it a million times. And the reason that this isn't an adventurous choice is not just because, of course, you'd expect me to have this, but because I have over a dozen different editions of Moby Dick, and I don't know why. I don't know what it is about this book that does that to me. But I mean, yes, it could be my favorite 19th century American novel. That it's certainly in the running of the top 3 for that, but that doesn't explain why I have so many copies. I don't know why I do, but I do. In this room alone, there are probably 6, including a normal black spine Penguin Classic that we will encounter somewhere along the line. So since this book has had fairly a lot of coverage on this channel, I don't really feel behooved to give it a whole lot more. Of course, if you have not read Moby Dick, I strongly advise you to read Moby Dick. It is an absolutely wonderful, supernaturally charged book. It is brooding and it is irreducible. And when it comes to reading Moby Dick, of course, I would urge you to read an unabridged version. I think in the current book market, at least in the English-speaking world, you have trouble finding an abridged version that isn't explicitly aimed at children. And I would also advise you to skip right to the beginning. skip past. Don't skip. You don't want to skip a forward as genial as that by Nathaniel Philbrick. But when you get to the beginning and you get to etymology, skip it. It's a whole page, skip it. Then you get to a section called extracts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages. Skip them. Just skip them completely. Don't even think about it. Then you get to chapter 1, loomings. Call me Ishmael. Start there. Start there. A disastrous choice to start a book any other way, but nevertheless, I've had plenty of students who heard me rave and rave about this book and then picked it up and said, well, I'm going to read this from start to back. And then they get to the start. It's stultifying. Absolutely stultifying. Don't make that mistake. Just don't feel any kind of Catholic guilt at skipping parts of a book that you have been told since you were knee-high to a grasshopper is a great book. No, just skip it. If you're interested in some of the extracts from nonfiction readings that Herman Melville did, if you have an interest in antiquarian book trade, or if you're maybe interested in the tiny glimmerings of the kind of book this might have been long before it became Moby Dick in his mind, then you can go back and read those sections. Just go straight to the book. But you don't need to hear much more from me on the subject. I might do another read-along of Moby Dick in 2020. You never know. You can never get enough read-alongs of them. There's never an end to the amount of things you can say about this book. But for now, that is your Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition, a fairly old friend on this channel. We will move on from here. Tomorrow we will probably have something a lot less familiar, but you never know. So I will wrap this up for now, but I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.